Okay, welcome back to our section on output price profit marginal analysis. We are going to start to look at the idea of total profit and how we go about estimating this. So costs and revenues are certainly important to our analysis decisions, but the reason they're important is not because we want to look at them separately, but because they can help us determine profits. So the goal of a firm, right, is to maximize profits. That is what we assume in this class, at least. It might seem kind of obvious, right, the idea that the firms want to maximize profits, but it is important that we do have this as an explicit assumption. Now, are there cases where this wouldn't hold? There could be, right? Some people often mention, what about nonprofit firms? Well, we don't really consider nonprofit firms in this class. It's kind of a separate analysis, although a lot of nonprofit firms do still use this type of analysis. They want to maximize their revenue, not necessarily because they want profits, but because they want to do more. Right? The Gates Foundation, for example, Bill Gates' foundation, it's not for profit, but they want to make smart business decisions so that they can do more good with the same amount of money. But firms like Walmart, Target, we assume they maximize profits, McDonald's, every business. Are there cases where you could argue they don't? Well, perhaps, right? Like Target, for example, gives away, I think they say 5% of their profits to charity. Well, strictly speaking, that might not be a profit maximizing move, although if you're a little bit more cynical, you might say, well, by doing that, they sure get a lot of good PR, and it might actually be worth it for them to do this. That could be right, but I'm hoping you'll think this assumption is close enough to being true, even if you don't agree with it, but I'm guessing you probably do. If you don't, I'm hoping you'll think it's close enough to be true that we can go with it, because the rest of the class we are indeed going with this assumption that the goal of the firms is not to do good, it's not to, basically it's everything else is to the side. They want to make as much money as they can make. What we are going to do now is look at the total profit curve and figure out how can we take the total profit and determine the marginal profit, and from both of those determine where is profit maximized, or I guess more precisely, what quantity should the firm choose to maximize their profits. So this graph is total profit, right? There's some output levels that would make lower profits. There's some that would be negative. We're not even graphing those at the moment. There's one output level, though, that will make the firm the greatest amount of profit possible. We indicate that with the Greek letter pi, which does typically stand for profits, put a star by it, and a quantity starred, right? That's relatively straightforward, right? There's some level of output that is best for the firm, that makes the firm the most money possible. What we want to do from this total profit and this highest point of profit, figure out what would our marginal profit curve look like. Well, marginal profit is the extra profit you get when you sell one more unit, or if you've had calculus, it's the derivative of the total profit function, or the slope of the total profit curve. What would that look like? Well, at all of these levels of output, when the firm sells one more unit, profits go up, which means marginal profit all the way up to this point is going to be positive. And more than that, the curve here, it's very steep at this point, which means profits are going up a lot, and then it keeps getting flatter. So profits keep going up, but by a smaller amount, which means marginal profit starts out really high and keeps decreasing. And at this very top point, the extra profit you get from selling another unit is zero, right? You've maximized your profit. But if you keep selling, if this firm starts off and it keeps selling unit after unit, and it gets to the profit maximizing quantity, and they decide, let's keep selling more units, what happens to their profit? Well, their profit starts to drop. Maybe their firm is inefficient. Maybe, we just know from demand and supply, maybe that because they're selling too much, the price is dropping a little bit. Whatever the reason, the profit is dropping for the firm, which means the marginal profit is negative. So marginal profit curve might look something like this. Well, what information then can we get from the marginal profit curve? Well, we know profit is maximized at Q star, but at Q star, marginal profit is 0. So to maximize profits, find the quantity. So to maximize profits, find the quantity where the marginal profit equals 0. So where is profit maximized? Well, profit, we know it's maximized at that highest point on our graph, but because of that, we also know that it's maximized where the marginal profit equals 0. This is often a little bit of a confusing concept because most principles of microeconomics students have not dealt with marginal analysis too much. The idea of how much extra are you getting. So profit is maximized when marginal profit equals 0. You have to think back to what marginal means, and really this is something to let set in for a while. Read, review, read the book, read through your notes a couple times. But the idea of marginal analysis, right? How much extra profit are you getting when you produce more? You want to get that to be 0. Why? Well, let's look at the case when marginal profit is positive. If marginal profit is greater than 0, what does that tell you? It tells you if you sell one more unit, your profits will go up. Okay? If you have a business and somebody tells you if you sell one more unit and your profits will increase, what are you going to do? Of course you're going to sell one more unit, right? You want more money. Your goal is to make as much money as possible. What happens if they say your marginal profit's negative? That means on the last unit you sold, your profits dropped. You lost money because you sold that last unit. Well, what will you want to do in that case? In that case, you want to cut down on the number of units you're selling, so your output would decrease. The only place you're happy, the only place where you maximize profits is where the extra amount of money you make is 0, right? You've sold every single unit that could make you money. You've drained every last penny that you can. By selling right up to the point when you finally don't make any more money. That's when marginal profit is 0. Well, marginal profit equals marginal revenue minus marginal cost. Right? You have an amount of revenue you bring in, the marginal revenue. You have an amount of cost you incur, the marginal cost. Profit then, because marginal profit equals 0, profit is maximized when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. There should be I don't have it on here, you should put a huge star by this, right? This is what we call the profit maximizing condition. Marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Absolutely crucial. You have to know this. So put a star on it, whatever you need to do, circle it, however you note that this is an extremely important point. But marginal analysis is how we'll do a lot of this, and this is what we would call the profit maximizing condition. Why is it maximized? Well, we've talked through the reasoning on the marginal profit issues, but let's just start to think of what happens if marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost or opposite. Well, if marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, if the firm produces one more unit, they get extra revenue. They also incur extra costs, right? This isn't rocket science. If marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, it means the firm is going to make more money if they sell one more unit. The extra revenue exceeds the extra cost, so you sell one more unit. If marginal revenue is less than marginal cost, it means if the firm cuts back by one unit, they're going to lose some revenue, but they'll also save on some costs. And the amount they save on the costs exceeds the revenue they lost. Well, that means the firm should cut back on their production. They should sell less. The profits will go up if they sell fewer units. The only point where the firm would want to maintain the current output is when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Really, I think all of this is pretty straightforward. The problem, I think, in learning this in the principles class is you probably haven't dealt with marginal analysis before, so it takes a little time to think about profits in terms of the very last unit you sell. What happens then if you sell one more unit? You know, that's really what marginal analysis is. What happens if we sell one more unit? What happens to our profits? Once you've got that down, I'm hoping you'll find this is relatively straightforward, but it does take a little bit of time. This is going to be crucial, right? We will be using marginal revenue, marginal costs condition, the profit maximizing condition, in our discussions of perfect competition, monopoly, and monopolistic competition. You will have to be able to do this. Think this way, understand what's happening with marginal revenue and marginal cost to be successful in these next chapters.